Hi, everyone. I'm so delighted to welcome all of you to the Fall 2023 Jammy Career Webinar Series. This month's topic is navigating our identities in the workplace. And my name is Yas Hardaway. I should have introduced myself, and I'm the Executive Director of Career Services at GSEP. And this program is in partnership with our GSEP Career Services and Alumni Relations team. For those of you who are new to our Jammy communities of practice, you may be wondering, what is Jammy? Jammy is a Swahili term for community, and our Jammy communities of practice programs are designed to provide up-to-date labor market information, as well as connect you to a broader professional community. In the fall, we host our Jammy Career Webinar series, like the one today, which are moderated Q&A panels. And in the spring, we hold our Jammy Career Connect sessions, which are interactive learning sessions that consist of breakout room discussions. So let me start by just providing an overview on what to expect today. I'll start by sharing our learning outcomes, what we hope that you'll gain from our time together. I'll touch on a few housekeeping items, and then we will go into our moderator and panelist introductions by Dr. Doran, and then go into our moderated Q&A. So we have some questions prepared that we'll be asking our panelists, and then we'll open up to all of you to see what questions that you might have that you'd like to ask. We'll close up with some resources that we think might be relevant and helpful from our session today, and then talk about what's next for spring 2024. So just let me start actually with our housekeeping items. Just a reminder that this session is being recorded, and the recording will be available in our participant drive after the session. Live transcription is provided, so please feel free to use it if you'd like to. And then we encourage you, if you are able to be on camera, then we encourage you to do so we can see who's here. And we also encourage you to use the rename tool to list your first and last name so that we know who's in the room. My colleague Franya will put our participant drive link in the chat. And again, this will provide you with the recording from not only this session, but our previous Jammy Career webinars, as well as the speaker lineup. So you can read some of the bios from our panelists today. So what do we hope that you will learn from our session today? We hope that you will gain clarity about diverse non-apparent identities and the specific issues individuals have faced based on their lived experience. We hope that you will gain more confidence in your ability to navigate and or support non-apparent identities in the workplace. And then finally, we hope that you will be able to connect to working professionals from our Pepperdine community. So at GSEP Career Services, our vision is that every GSEP graduate would have the clarity, the confidence, and the community to be able to access, thrive in, and transform the future workplace. So our programs are built around those core values and the vision that we have set. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague and the Director of Alumni Relations, Dr. Renee Dorn. Dr. Dorn?
Thank you so much, Yas. I'm so excited to be able to introduce to everyone our panelists for today, as well as the moderator of today's discussion. So first, let me start with the moderator. So her name is Sandra Harrison. She is a graduate from Grazie a Dio Business School program, and she's the executive director of the Office of Student Accessibility at Pepperdine University. So welcome, Sandra.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Now, we also have 2 alums and 2 students from GSEP who will be a part of the panel today, which is so wonderful to have. So our first panelist that I'm going to introduce is Dr. J. Lamar Gray. He is a GSEP alum from the EDOL program. He is also vice president of programming with New HD Los Angeles, and it's called New HD Radio. And he's also the host of the Strictly Business Show with Dr. J at Gray Sky Studios. So welcome, Dr. J.
Hello, Dr. Renee. It's a pleasure to be here once again. Why are you laughing at me?
I'm always laughing at you. Let me just tell everyone, Dr. J and I have known each other for years, and I have worked with him on his radio show. So we know each other quite well. So welcome again, Dr. J.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. Now, next, I'd like to introduce one of our GSEP current students. She is Julie Kogura. She is production coordinator with virtual production technology at Industrial Light and Magic, which is a part of Lucasfilms. So welcome, Julie. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much, and I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we have another GSEP alum, Lior Ram. He is a licensed professional clinical counselor, national certified counselor, and certified group psychotherapist at Integrative Psychotherapy Group. So welcome, Lior. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Renee. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, wonderful. And last but not least, we have another GSEP current student, Joseph Rodrigo. He is president and founder at HITAT. Correct? Hopefully I said that correctly.
Hi, Todd. Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Joseph. And at this point, I'm going to turn over everything to Sandra Harrison so she can start with the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dorn. I appreciate that. And welcome, everyone. And I want to again welcome our panelists and thank them in advance for sharing their stories and helping us all learn a little bit today so that we will understand identities in the workplace a little bit more this afternoon than we did this morning. So I want to start with asking each of the panelists to give us a brief overview of your background, include your Pepperdine affiliation, your professional experience, and then your connection to today's topic of identity. And then if you have any identity-related terminology that we should know about, please help us with that shared language. And why don't we go in order by which Dr. Dorr introduced us. So Dr. Gray, Dr. J, Julie, Lior, and then Joseph.
I am Dr. J. Lamar Gray. I am an alumni of Pepperdine class of 2014. I received my doctor of education and organizational leadership. And I started off going in the learning and development field when I first started, but eventually I went back into broadcasting, which I've been in for over 30 years closely. So that's what I've been doing. My affiliation with Pepperdine now is just showing up for these jammy sessions. And I host a business show, and I work with newhdmedia.com, which is an organization that helps find jobs and create broadcasting opportunities for people with special needs, autism, disability, other disabilities, and disabled vets. So my closest identity is that I'm a father of 2 special needs sons. So that's my identity now. And this is why I work with the organization.
Thank you.
Did I miss something? Did I get everything there?
I think that was it. Thank you. Julie, you want to go next?
Yes. So hi everyone. I'm Julie Kogura and I go by she, her pronouns, and I identify as autistic. In case you are low vision, I'm Asian with brown hair and eyes, wearing a light turquoise aqua sweater, and my background is a career webinar background. I'm currently in the Master's Psychology graduate online program here at Pepperdine, and I currently work at Industrial Light and Magic, which is also known as ILM, which is under Lucasfilm and under the Walt Disney Company umbrella. My undergraduate is, don't hate me, but is actually at Loyola Marymount University. And previously I worked on shows such as Jimmy Kimmel Live and worked with under Dick Clark Productions and many other shows.
Thank you.
Should I jump in next?
Jump
in. So again, my name is Lior Ram, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. licensed professional clinical counselor, national certified counselor, and certified group psychotherapist, which also means I'm an overachiever. And I own a private group psychotherapy practice in Beverly Hills, and I'm also a psychological consultant. I went to Pepperdine for graduate school at GSEP, where I received my master's in clinical psychology in 2017. And in terms of my connection to today's topic, I'm a cisgender, gay, Jewish, German, and Israeli male. And I'm also a brother and a husband and a father. And so I think these parts of my identity may not always be visible to others. So I'm really excited to be here today and to be a part of this really important conversation.
Thank you.
Hey,
Joseph.
thank you. Hey, everyone. Joseph Rodrigo. Still happy to be here, joining everyone today. My professional background, spent about 15 years in the technology space, working with some of the largest companies in the world, Rogers Communications up in Toronto, Oracle in Silicon Valley for almost a decade. That's kind of where my background and experience lied. And, in kind of going through my own, as I focus on mental health in that space, going through some of those challenges, really focus, focus on shift my core to my why. And that was about 7 years ago. And I've kind of been in this transitionary path, leaving a very lucrative job in technology sales as I redefine my why. And in the last 3 years, I've been a social entrepreneur, servicing different communities in the mental health awareness space, specifically in the corporate arena. So that's kind of what led me to Pepperdine, because I didn't, 10 years ago I would have never imagined that I would be a part of this room, but here I am today, just a completely different person in a different space, making an impact in a completely different way. And I'm super happy to find the Pepperdine community, because I made this analogy earlier that I kind of felt like a high school senior becoming a college freshman, and that type of transition has happened in the last 3 to 6 months as I've kind of started my master's, and find myself with a completely different circle and community that I was once affiliated with. So I find it super refreshing to share that and how that has changed and shaped and will continue to shape my career. So I'm super fortunate to be here, and I kind of touched on the connection on today's topic, and this kind of my focus area is always increasing accessibility to mental health awareness, education, and racial equity. So some of the terminology that comes along with that includes DEI, BIPOC, and MHA in terms of pronouns for some of those spaces that I work in.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, everyone. So let's go ahead and jump into some questions. And I'd like to ask specifically Lior and Julie this question. How have any of your non-apparent identities, the ones that someone can't look at you and identify, how have those impacted your employment, either for good or for bad, for positive or for negative? Lior, would you like to go first?
Sure. I could say a lot about this because my career did not start out in psychotherapy at all. So I had quite a windy road and did a number of things. I was in the film industry and did some producing. I went into real estate, then into consulting, kind of all before I ended up here in psychotherapy. So I think my identities really had different kinds of impacts for me throughout the different careers that I had. So I guess I'll touch on some of them briefly. In film production and real estate, I think sometimes these industries can be perceived as a little bit more traditional or conservative, depending on your perspective. And I initially felt like there was a need to be cautious about particularly revealing my sexual orientation. There was a concern for me about how my clients or my colleagues or my superiors would kind of react. And so there was a bit of like an undercurrent of stress for me. I think a lot of people think that in the film industry, the creative environment would be like really open, but I found that it was anything but. There was a lot of a lot of homophobic language that I felt really like was threatening to my coming out. So, prior to graduating from college and getting into the film industry, I was openly gay with my friends and my family. But pretty quickly, once I entered the working world in film production, I ran right back into the closet. And it felt like that was going to be important for me to really be a part of the boys club that was running Hollywood at the time. And then when I went into real estate, I found it to be a little bit easier to be openly gay. But what happened there was I suddenly became a lot more subject to like stereotyping. So I'd often be consulted by my clients on like the interior design of the house, when in reality, like I knew a lot more about the prices per square foot than I did about Jonathan Adler rugs. And so that became really kind of just frustrating for me. And I felt like I had to kind of play into the stereotypes because I wanted to close the sale, and it didn't feel very good to me. Eventually, like I said, I went into consulting, and it was mostly operations management for property management companies. And because at times I can be a glutton for punishment, I decided to work in these companies that were in very conservative towns. And so there, not only did I feel the need to hide my sexuality, but I also was actively hiding, my Jewish heritage as well, really for physical safety. I have the privilege of not, people not necessarily knowing immediately when I enter a room that I'm Jewish or that I'm gay. And so in these towns where there were quite literally burning crosses and active KKK membership, my safety really took priority. And so that overtook any identity pride that I had at the time. And at that time, I decided it was worth finding a new career. So I did transition into psychotherapy, and I'm so grateful that this is a field that I think embraces diversity and personal authenticity in a way that my other careers did not. So I've been in a much more accepting environment, and certainly being open about my sexual orientation feels a lot less risky. Any part of my identity really feels a lot less risky. In some cases, I think it's even an asset, because it can help me to connect more deeply with some of the clients that I work with. And in addition to that, I didn't mention this in my introduction, but other non-visible parts of my identity are, anxiety, mental illness within my family. And so I think that those are also pieces that have been really great assets to the work that I do, and giving me a perspective that may or may not be exactly the same as my clients, but at least some taste of what some of them do go through. So
Good.
that's my
Thank
story.
you.
Sure.
We are glad that you have found your authentic space where you can be you in your career.
So am I. Thank you.
Good. Julie, tell us about how your non-apparent identities have impacted you.
Yeah, so I've actually been very fortunate to have the opportunities that I have had, but sometimes it is difficult to navigate work environments when people are so ignorant towards disabilities, especially when it comes to invisible disabilities. I often feel misunderstood because people don't understand the neurodivergent community. In the past, I have been misunderstood when it comes to my stims. For example, I stim by dancing because it's a way for me to regulate my body. And some people thought I wanted attention because of how well I danced. So here I'll share with all of you a little bit. Sometimes I tense all my muscles, and it's actually known as popping. And so some people was like, wow, that's so cool. And then they thought, oh, I just wanted attention and I just wanted, to be on the show or something, when that really was not the case. It's just, how I regulate my body. But that's like an ignorant part when it comes to autism, but it's not all bad. It's not all bad experiences, because being autistic has also helped me in the workplace. For example, 2 of my special interests are letters and numbers. And when I worked at Jimmy Kimmel Live, one of my jobs was to organize the tapes. And so I would barcode all the different tapes that we had. Like we had field tapes, we had show tapes, and I know I'm dating myself because they're tapes and we don't do tapes anymore, but they did. And so I used to organize all those tapes, and I would barcode all those tapes and would organize them so we can locate them. And I came up with a whole tape system. And that's due to my autistic special interest of letters and numbers. So that's how autism helped me.
Good. That's a great benefit to your workplace. For Leor and Julie, do you have any comments on when to disclose your identity and when not to disclose, or do you have anything you want to share on that?
Who do you
Leor
want to?
first.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Yeah, so I practice psychodynamic psychotherapy, which means that part of the orientation that I work from is really quite boundaried. So I really err on the side of not disclosing more often than I do disclose. And that's, again, purely kind of an orientation piece of my practice. So I find that for me, disclosure with my clients specifically is going to be more informed around whether or not there's going to be a benefit to them knowing. There are times when I would want, let's say, one of my gay male clients to know that I'm also a gay male because I think that can be helpful to them. There might be also times when a gay male client is working through their difficulties with straight men, and perhaps not knowing my orientation can kind of be a little bit more grist for the mill. So I don't want to take that away from the work, let them guess a little bit as we're going through. I definitely think if there's ever a time that my identities are going to impact the work in such a way where I might not be able to be completely neutral, that's really important for me to disclose to a client so that they have the opportunity to decide whether or not I'm the right fit for them. When it comes to my colleagues, I'm an open book with all of them. I think part of that is about my background and feeling like there are many times where I had to be a little bit more secretive about all sorts of parts of my identity. And so that's one thing that I, really kind of make a bit of a mission for myself to get to be open with them. One thing I never disclose to clients, though, I will say, is any form of mental illness or kind of presenting problems that I'm dealing with. That's one thing that I find is going to negatively impact the work that I do with them. And suddenly they're thinking they have to take care of me in some way. So I don't want that to be the case. But aside from that, I'm pretty, I kind of just take in the ethical considerations with each case and see whether or not it would be important and impactful in a positive way.
Thank you. Julie, how about you? When do you disclose and when do you not disclose?
Yeah, so well, first of all, I believe it depends on the person. So like if I'm telling someone else, like if they should disclose or not disclose, I believe it depends on the person and if the person is ready to talk about it. Even though I was just diagnosed as autistic this past February of this year, I knew I had a language comprehension disability since I was in middle school that is arguably linked to autism. I was never going to come out and say I had a disability in the workplace. In fact, I wanted to make it a year without revealing I had a disability because I normally disclosed it as, I'm so sorry I did this wrong because I have a disability. That's how I would say it. However, I started to feel more comfortable with myself as having a disability. Without disclosing I had a disability, my manager at the time talked about how her son has ADHD and was educating herself on the disability. She didn't say, oh no, my son has ADHD, like the world is collapsing, but more educating and getting more information about it. And it made me feel so comfortable with her. And therefore, like once I made it a year, I disclosed that I have a disability. And she asked, what can I do to better support you? And I thought that was like really cool because that has never happened before. I normally got oh, but you got good grades. Like, what do you mean you have a disability? Oh, you don't look autistic, like all of these microaggressions. But instead, she was putting the onus on her. And so I told her, Oh no, I'm just telling you because I'm thinking about going back to school to do more research and wanted to let you know. Hence why I'm in this program to do more autism research. Then I disclosed it to Lucasfilm because I saw that we didn't do anything for Autism Acceptance Month. So I brought it up. Then executives were surprised and mentioned how they have relatives who are autistic. So this is important. Therefore, I think it's important when disclosing to be comfortable with yourself, but also know how, how do people in the workplace talk about, disabilities? Do they think down upon it, or are they actually trying to educate themselves and be better allies in the community?
Good, thank you. Let's shift the perspective or shift the identity and go to Dr. J in his role as parent. What have you observed about your children's experiences navigating education and work? What support and resources did you find of most value? And where did you need to advocate for access and opportunity for your children?
Well, both my sons have autism, Julie. So that's what they have. And it's more, one of my sons is completely verbal, won't stop sometimes, and the other one won't start. So and so I've had the pleasure of being their dad, and taking it into consideration everything about them, and it actually gave me a different perspective about people, because I mentioned I used to do learning and development, and when you go on these seminars or PowerPoint presentations, you hear people complaining about employees. And on my show, Strictly Business, I talk a lot about the workplace behavior, organizational behavior, how to deal with people. And it gave me some insight of how sometimes people say in the workplace, well, somebody's not motivated, or somebody doesn't get it, or somebody's slow, somebody's lazy. And I have to start shifting my facilitation and saying, look, that person could have an issue. That person could have a autism or be on the spectrum. And we're all on the spectrum on one way or another. I mean, so it changed me about looking at people differently and understanding that everybody could have a problem. So when you look at that in the workplace, it's not really cool, because we don't know why you have these benchmarks that employees have to meet, and somebody's not meeting them or not getting a promotion because they may have this. And unlike Julie, and they didn't disclose it, or they didn't know. Now, the good news is, because my sons are finishing high school, the next generation already knows. The next generation, they know about autism, special needs, because everybody has somebody in their family now. So these young kids get it. My son's very popular in school. He's gone to the prom and everybody knows him. Kids talk to him. He's mainstream and everything. So I was afraid that he would be like an outsider, but he's not. People do get involved. So the next generation is going to definitely help us go to the next level. So the thing about my sons, their autism is obvious. Okay. So it's not like you can't have to disclose it, or it's something this or something there. It's obvious. You talk to my son. He's like imagine my son is like Forrest Gump and Kevin Hart put together. So he's very funny and amusing, if you can picture that. So learning, that's the biggest takeaway I learned from them and getting their resources. It has been a challenge through education. My son's getting a high school diploma, and a lot of kids with special needs get pushed down to just a certificate. One of his best friends at school has cerebral palsy, and she was on a certificate trial. Now, like, that has nothing to do with her ability to get a high school diploma. So we talked to the parent of how to ask for that, and not ask, demand that my child, because we always demanded that my son was going to get a high school diploma and beyond. So it's all about learning what's going on, look at the resources. And sometimes you just have to create resources. The resources are there. You just got to make sure that you make it get directed to your child or your friends or your family member situation. There's no lack of resources. It's just a lack of being able to direct them to the right place.
Thank you. Absolutely. The resources are there. And speaking of, Joseph, what prompted you to start the resource of an organization supporting employee mental health in the workplace? And what practices have you found to be most helpful, impactful for both employee and employer?
Yeah, amazing question. I'll try to keep this as surmised as possible. So in terms of like what prompted, I don't think there was a, one moment, aha, like this makes sense to kind of move in the direction, because the work is not easy, and I think anyone who identifies with, having gone through, depression, anxiety, or anywhere on the spectrum of having one of those issues would agree that, it's daunting spending, 25, 40 hours, even you dare do more than that per week. So I still consider this like my transition to how I'm capable or how I'm, mentally fit enough to do this, and really own it. And that's kind of why I've, invested in a Pepperdine master's education specifically on this subject to kind of continue to champion that. But from an earlier standpoint, myself, my background is my parents are from Sri Lanka, and I was a first generation immigrant in Canada, born and raised in Toronto, and now I live in San Diego. So, I've always found that, identifying who I am has always, it shifts in terms of who's in the room. When I'm back home in Sri Lanka, mental health awareness is just nowhere near on the Maslow hierarchy of needs as a priority when you don't have adequate food, you don't have adequate shelter, you don't have adequate to so many basic necessities that, us in North America just take for granted. So I feel like growing up, this wasn't a big deal because it was understood now that I have the education that everyone's going through it, but they were going through much bigger things, from that perspective, that this didn't seem to be that much of an area where it made sense to focus on because, for me growing up, I came from an immigrant family and, my parents worked super hard, but I was, blue collar at best. So my dream was just to like be independent and get a university education and, make a six-figure income. That's how when I was 18, 19, 20, defined success, being independent, being able to take care of my family. And when I kind of surpassed those goals very early in my career, being in technology, it kind of, once the money was out of the way, it was kind of like, why, like there's other problems occurring. And I saw as I became a leader at the age of 26, I went from managing myself to managing a team of 11, and by 30 managing a team of over 50. And with those experiences, like my organization was asking me, being in technology, being in sales, I was responsible for, as you can imagine, millions of dollars of technology per quarter, per year. And we never really got trained on how to discuss, all these factors that are contributing to someone not contributing in their seat. As Dr. J mentioned earlier, it's kind of the same token where we were focusing a lot of the problem on, tangible things that we can discuss. Why aren't you making more calls? Why aren't you sending more outreach? But nobody was identifying that some sales rep, even some of the most successful ones, were just dormant at times, and we weren't. There was no area. There was no focus in the process to dissecting what people are going through when you're putting them in a very high stress situation, and it was never discussed. And my job was to increase sales quarter over quarter, and I had a team reporting to me. But I knew that to get the best out of my reps, I had to understand what every individual was going through, because what motivated Joe Rodrigo to be successful might not have motivated the 11 members when I first became a manager. So I had to quickly understand what motivates people and is this the right fit? And at that time, I was so young where I was just so happy to be in working for a large company, making a very lucrative income, that it didn't click to me that like some people were just should have never been in that seat. And now I look back at all the folks that I've coached and have managed, and in kind of learning from from those pillars, it's definitely helped me identify that there are bigger problems that people are going through, and we need to start there. And once we start there and understand and identify and help them on that path of what their problems are at home, in the workplace, with their significant other, if they're going through grief because one of their parents passed away or something that's going on with their kid, these are all things that we're all going through every hour of every day that trump the success of our organization on any given quarter or any given year. So just going through those experiences, I knew that when I was preparing, when I kind of made the segue from my former organization, I didn't know what I wanted to do, to be honest. I knew I was good at sales. I knew I was a good people leader, but it's still taken me some time to really hone in on how do I address accessibility and mental health. I started off servicing a population that I was, in my personal network, enterprise organizations, and that's kind of where I started. And in kind of being in this process for the last couple of years, it's kind of further connecting me to my why of I need to do other things and help and increase accessibility to people who are, in different pockets, people of color, minorities, women, and that's kind of what forced me to kind of continue to focus and serve the communities I do, but also expand the knowledge and development and increase the accessibility to those minority populations.
Thank you, Joseph. Now we have about 2 minutes left on our guided conversation here. So let me throw out a question and ask each of you to share 30 seconds or 45 seconds on of the organizations you've been a part of. How have organizations created an inclusive workspace, the kind that Joseph is looking for? Where have organizations fallen short, and how have you navigated those shortcomings? And then where have organizations done good work in creating inclusivity for all identities? So why don't we start with Lior, go to Joseph, then Julie, then Dr. J.
There's so much to say about this. I'm going to try and I have some notes, so I'm going to just try and get quickly to it. But I'd say one of the things that I think is the biggest shortcoming that I see in a lot of organizations is like superficial efforts. I think that there are times where, like, I'm thinking about a tech company that I consulted with that celebrated Pride Month, right? And with a lot of fanfare, but they had zero policies in place to support their LGBTQ employees. And I think, some of those things happen pretty frequently, and I find really disheartening. And, inadequate mental health support, as Joseph was just speaking to. And I think there's a lot of places where a lack of representation and leadership, all of these different pieces really add to the picture that those of us with invisible identities or minorities or challenges are paying attention to. And so I think the biggest successes that I've seen are not just in policies and training, which I think many organizations attempt to do, but having like resource groups for employees and having groups that are available for people that are of the same types of minorities, challenges, neurodiversity, communal kind of groups. When you get to work with people and actually like speak to people who mirror you rather than just are a window into another world, I think that that's really important. I also think flexible work arrangements, which luckily has flourished. One of the things that I think was kind of a positive piece of the pandemic, because there were so many awful things about it, having more flexible work arrangements, I think, is really wonderful. And lastly, I'll just say open communication channels. I think that, businesses that allow the person on the lowest rung of the ladder to be able to speak to the person on the highest rung of the ladder tend to just have more success, and the numbers show it. So really having those open communications without any fear of retaliation, I think is really important.
Okay, I think actually he gave us a lot of good insight on that. So I will close out this portion and hand us over to Shelby and David.
So we'll have Sophia take over the Q&A from here. Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. This has been an amazing opportunity for all of us. And I just want to continue some of the conversations that we were having here. So I know that Julie discussed how her manager was able to help her by simply asking, what can I do to support you? And I think that's such a validating and important question in the workplace. So I kind of wanted to shift it over to how can I, as a colleague, what does effective allyship look like, and how can colleagues actively support individuals with non-apparent identities in the workplace? And since I mentioned Julie, I'll start off with you.
Yeah, thank you for that. And that's a question that I get a lot is like, oh, okay, like great, you gave us all this information. What can I go do with it? To be completely honest, it's using the right terminology. It's educating yourself and not saying, like kind of like what I said, oh no, like my kid has autism or ADHD, you fill in that blank. It's like no, 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 no. Please educate yourself. And when I say educate yourself, I am saying like go to the correct sources. What I mean by that, in the autism world, Autism Speaks is actually very harmful to the autistic community. And I'm sorry to say this too, but ABA therapy, I know we're in the psychology program, but ABA therapy is very harmful to the autistic community. And so it's really, when I say like actually go out and do your research, the research by the actual people, there's a hashtag actually autistics. And so when you do that type of research, then I know I'm comfortable in talking to you. And so if you use that, then that opens the door for everything, and that's how you can become an ally.
Thank you so much, Julie. And I think it's important that you said for people to educate themselves, not always relying on other people to educate, really doing the work yourself. I also wanted to ask this question to Lior or Dr. J. Joseph, if you had any additional comments that you would like to share. And also, I know that Julie mentioned some resources. So if you want to share those as well, we would definitely love to hear them.
Yeah, I'll share just a quick kind of strategy that kind of extends to what some of these awesome panelists have already kind of outlined. I feel like it's not necessarily the messaging that's always the problem. Often it's the delivery of the messaging. For example, how often have you been on a one-on-one with your manager or in a team and the manager delivers the message and at the very end, hey, by the way, if anyone asks for help or anyone needs anything, just let me know. You're not really like the intention isn't there to actually for someone to utilize your help. So in terms of rephrasing the question, I always have from my experience, I've drawn that being vulnerable helps people to share in those moments. So instead of just asking if you're on a one-on-one, hey, are you having any experiences? I would take it upon myself to get vulnerable and share an experience that made me kind of vulnerable, and then oftentimes like that employee, that colleague often reciprocates and saying, hey, this is kind of what I'm going through first, and that kind of opens the gateway for them to share. And then now your bond is so much more stronger and open, and that person, now you've created a safe space for that person to actually come to you when they need to. And it sounds so basic, but this does not happen at some of the largest organizations in the world. So I'm assuming it is not happening in a lot of institutions. I feel like just if you learn nothing else from me today, it's just like asking those simple questions in a more vulnerable, effective way will definitely do a lot.
Thank you, Joseph. Oh, yes, go ahead, Dr.
I want to talk about, Julie mentioned that Autism Speaks, and yes, don't donate money to them. Okay, they're only into providing information, doing all these things. They're making a lot of money, their board of directors. So no, we at New HD Media, we're a nonprofit 501c3 organization, but we creating opportunities, and we couldn't even work with Autism Speaks. So the about the workplace and autism in the workplace, it's still not there yet because the next generation hasn't taken over. Have you ever seen a kid at the grocery store bagging groceries who's autistic? That kid is only making, the company's only paying $2 an hour, and the state pays the rest. So they don't even have the guts to pay the kids a full salary out of their service. Okay, that's how that works. So they're getting very cheap labor. That's why a lot of them do that. So what we have done at New HD, that's why we needed an issue, because the founder feels that some of these kids are, and not that you can't bag groceries, that's not an honorable job. Honest work is good work, but we tried to create something that these kids won't be limited to, We have a girl who's blind and autistic who's on the air, and we train these kids to work from home. They literally are radio stars from their own home because we have a software they have to download, they have to record their tracks, and they're learning technical skills as well. I never thought my son Jeremiah would ever do this. And then I met the founder. He said, give him a shot. You can train him. And I trained him. And I used to have to do everything for him. And now I fall asleep in the chair while he's recording his tracks. So he'd say, hey, Dad, I'm done. And that's how it's done. So that's what we do, creating opportunities. And more jobs have to create opportunities, but not treating it like it's a crutch or you doing somebody a favor. So that's what we do at newhdmedia.com. And we are a 501c3 organization, and we could use the help because, like I said, we're trying to pay these kids and build a salary for them in retirement so they don't have to lean on anybody. Because the parents, when you're a parent of kids with special needs, your biggest fear is what happens once I'm gone? Can they fend for themselves? Can they take care of themselves? Do they have a trade? And that's what we're doing.
Thank you to all of you for those resources. I see, Lior, you were going to say
Oh,
something.
I think everything was stated so well. The only thing I was thinking of adding is, in terms of support, asking how you are creating spaces that are safer for people to be kind of more open in their identity, and how you are creating spaces that allow people to feel empowered to kind of step into their identity. And so just by kind of asking those questions to yourselves, sometimes that can kind of brew some more ideas and create those really kind of progressive spaces.
Thank you, Lior. Yeah, I think that you all shared is what bringing back humanness to the workplace, like genuine care for people. And I just appreciate you all sharing that. I see I have a question in the chat for Lior. As a clinician, what other examples of non-apparent identities have your clients had to navigate in the workplace? And how do you support them with potential challenges they have faced?
Good question. I'd say certainly, probably obviously mental health issues. Many clients struggle with conditions like anxiety and depression that aren't really visible. And as Joseph was mentioning before, they really significantly impact their work life. And chronic illness is another one. I think people have to deal with fluctuating health, medical appointments, need for accommodations. And it can be difficult to explain or justify to employers without necessarily having to disclose their medical condition, which doesn't always feel fair. Neurodiversity, as has been mentioned many times, I think is one that is not always apparent. And it does often impact the way that they're processing information. It sometimes can be challenging. Social interactions, organizational structures, communication styles that don't always align with their needs. Certainly members of the LGBTQ community often grapple with, again, whether or not to disclose their sexual orientation or their gender identity. Not all workplaces are asking people what their preferred gender pronouns are, unfortunately. And so, especially in regions with like more conservative social norms, I think that comes up quite a bit. And the other one that I notice are different cultural and religious backgrounds that also are not immediately apparent. I think right now, for instance, the current war happening in the Middle East between Israel and Gaza is one where some clients may not feel safe to disclose their Jewish or Palestinian identities. And so, those are some examples. I could probably think of more, but I know we're on a timer. And so I'd say, kind of going back to something I was talking about before, just to be brief about it, I really work, aside from empathy and listening and wanting to understand from these clients what their experience is like, finding ways to help them empower kind of themselves in these different organizations, decide kind of if, when, and how to disclose their identities, what the pros and cons are of each of these situations, and sometimes finding whether it's assistance programs or allies within the workplace that they can go to. But ultimately, my hope is that they can feel empowered to choose whether or not to continue working there, and if so, how to make it a better place for them.
Thank you, Leor, and thank you, Julie. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Dr. Gray. Thank you, Sandy, so much for being here with us today. I think we can all agree this was an amazing session, and I will hand it over to my colleague Ernesto, so he can talk more about enrollment services. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sophia. Appreciate it, and thank you to the panelists. Appreciate you guys sharing about your journey and your expertise as well. My role here at Pepperdine University is an enrollment officer. I help our students learn more about the programs that we offer here. So as you know, we are Pepperdine, and we are the Graduate School of Education and Psychology. So we have a variety of programs, really, both in education and in psychology, that offer different kinds of programs and different kind of focuses also for students interested. I will be dropping in the chat really quickly some of the links to those programs really quickly so that you have access to them. But really, I'll be happy to connect with all of you, or with those of you that are interested, or if you know people who are interested in learning more about the programs that we have. For example, we have some of our folks here are alumni from our psychology programs, and some are actual students in the program, for example, as the Masters of Art in Social Entrepreneurship and Change. So all of these programs are available. All of these programs do offer different challenges and of course different opportunities, both academically and professionally, and I'll be more than happy to connect with all of you if you have any questions. Again, I'll be dropping in the chat in just a minute a few of the links to the programs as well as my information, but please know that you always have someone here to help out if you have any questions about the academics, whether it be myself in the education division, or whether it be some of my colleagues in the psychology division. I'll be more than happy to connect you with them as well. Thank you for the time. I appreciate it. I'll pass it up to Sophia again.
Thank you. I wanted to invite you all to follow us on social media. And I think it's going to come up pretty soon. But if not, we'll drop it in the chat, all of our social media pages. By following us, you're not only staying updated about events like these, but you're also able to have more opportunities, discoveries, and friendships. So we really invite you to connect with us. We also have a LinkedIn alumni group. So we would love to connect with you, and I'll hand it over to Usman. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Usman. I serve as the Career Design Counselor here as part of our team at GSEP Career Services, and I'm here today to share with you our vision for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So our vision at Career Services here is that every graduate will have the clarity, confidence, and community to access, thrive in, and transform our future workplace. And as part of our DEIB efforts here, our team is committed to ensuring students and alumni, including our community members, have access to our resources and services from an equitable lens, and to foster a sense of community and belonging for each student while honoring each individual's diverse backgrounds and identities, as we've discussed here. And we've curated a list of resources as well as articles and tools and strategies to be able to navigate diverse identities in the workplace. We have some resources here specifically highlighting mental health in the workplace and navigating those conversations and topics. Also support and advocate for our LGBTQ plus community. We have a presentation as referenced earlier in the chat by our very own faculty member, Dr. Richard Espinoza, who's here with us today. Thank you for being here. And his presentation is talking about the coming out process and being able to share aspects of identities revolving around LGBTQ+. And then we also have advocacy for individuals with disability in the workplace, and we have a list of topics and resources regarding different disabilities and how to navigate those in the workplace. I'll turn it over to Nadine for what's next. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Usman. So just very quickly, I wanted to share a little bit about what's coming up next spring. So stay tuned for our Spring 2024 Jamie Career Connect series. So it's a little bit different than the webinars that we've had this fall. In the spring with the Career Connect, you'll actually have a chance to go into breakouts with the speakers and interact with them one-on-one. So it's a much more interactive learning session. So stay tuned for that. And we also would love to hear from you about today's session. Your feedback really helps us inform our future programs. So if you can, please take a moment to complete our really brief post-event survey. And by completing the survey, you'll actually get a chance to be entered into our opportunity drawing for an Amazon gift card, which I think someone will be adding the link for the survey in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadine. And just wanted to put the social media slide up there one more time. Sophia touched on it briefly, but just really encourage you to follow GSEP on these different platforms. It's an opportunity to hear what the conversations are. And you'll notice that as you follow different alumni or faculty or current students, it helps you not only build your community with Pepperdine, but it also helps you kind of deepen your awareness and understanding of different topics that are really relevant and important to our community. So thank you. Okay, so I would love to end with a Zoom group photo. We are just so grateful again for our panelists for taking the time to speak to us today. We know that you are busy and have busy lives. And so just the fact that you have taken time to be with us today, to share your experiences, to be vulnerable about your experiences and your identities, really speaks to who you are as people. And just know that it's been a gift to our community today to have you. So on the count of three, if you're comfortable and you want to put your camera on the count of three, I'm going to ask you to choose an emoji. And so I will just take a brief group Zoom shot to capture our time together today. So 1, 2, 3. There we go. Okay, and we'll do one more. 1, 2, 3. There we go. All right. Thank you. We look forward to seeing you in the spring. Thanks so much for being here today.